All right, perfect. So I'm going to try to give you all a kind of not 101, but maybe 102 on all things tobacco advocacy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the policies and laws that we work on, and then we'll really dial down into how you can get more engaged and amplify your voice and be part of the process. So, so as you all are well aware, tobacco is the leading cause of preventable death and disease in Texas. It takes 28,000 of our fellow Texans' lives each year. Nationwide, that is 500,000. It is the leading cause of preventable death. We also know that with the surge of youth vaping, we've seen a huge increase in the particularly high school tobacco use rate, while at the same time, we're at a near 30, 40-year low when it comes to adult smoking. And so policies are working, but we really need to do more to address the youth vaping crisis. And as you can see here, starting at even 6th grade, nearly 1 in 10 middle school students are trying tobacco products. And as we know, because of the nature of tobacco, the nature of nicotine, and the way the human brain evolves during the teenage years, that if you try tobacco as a teenager, you are very likely to become a lifetime addict. And so we really focus a lot of policies on trying to prevent people from ever starting smoking, because we know that if you make it to 21 without starting, you're very unlikely to ever start smoking. And so unfortunately, the American Lung Association releases a report each year that grades each state on 5 different tobacco policies. These are all policies that we know are proven to reduce tobacco use. And so we grade each state on how well they're doing on those policies. And as you can see here, unfortunately, Texas has all failing grades. And this includes tobacco prevention and control funding, the baseline for all programs that work on this. Smoke-free indoor air, there's no statewide smoke-free indoor air ordinance. Tobacco taxes, we can raise the price, we can make it more difficult for kids to purchase them. Access to cessation services, helping folks quit. There's such a large adult population, and we know that it often takes 6 or 7 times to quit. So are we doing everything we can to help those adults quit? And then lastly, flavored tobacco products, particularly with the rise of e-cigarettes, has brought about the return of flavored tobacco products and the role they play in helping initiate students and young teens. And so again, we know what works, and it is a combination of these policies I've talked about. So tobacco price increases, smoke-free policies, cessation access, media campaigns, and then a bunch of other kind of things on the side as well that we also know play a role. The availability of tobacco products, the pricing and promotion, how are they advertised? The age of sale, as you all know, Texas raised the age of sale to 21, but is that being enforced? Do retailers know that they can't sell e-cigarettes to minors? And lastly, are we holding retailers accountable? They're ultimately the ones who are selling these products. What are the laws doing to hold them accountable and prevent them from selling them to youth? And so we have had, as I mentioned, a lot of success in the past. And here's just a quick recap. There's been kind of changing coalitions of folks working on these issues throughout the years, from Smoke-Free Texas, Texas 21, and now we're the Texas Tobacco Control Coalition. But it was back in 2005 that we actually last raised the cigarette price from then 41 cents to $1.41 per pack. That was a big win, and it took several years of effort, and it took voices like you all coming in and saying, this is a problem in my community among teens, and I think this will make a difference. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to raise any tobacco taxes since then, and if you think about not only just the passage of time, but particularly inflation, that means that dollar cigarette tax that we increased in 2005 is even less now than it was then. In the 2010s, that's when e-cigarettes really came on the market. And so we worked to start to incorporate them and get rid of all the many loopholes. It does still often feel like whack-a-mole. E-cigarettes are really able to take advantage of the fact that they're a new product and evade a lot of regulations. Tobacco 21 was a very promising new policy that we're still kind of waiting to see how it works. No one had ever done it before. There wasn't decades of data like there was with cigarette tax increases. But we know, and the data looks good, that 95% of smokers start before they're 21. So if we raise the age a little bit, we can help prevent teens, particularly those 14, 15, 16-year-olds, make it a lot more difficult for them to ever start smoking. And then most recently, we've done some work around e-cigarette retailer licensure. As you all know, it seems like there's a vape store or an e-cig retailer on every corner. Obviously in gas stations, they're right there on the counter. So we're working to, again, hold those retailers accountable and improve compliance so that they really are afraid to sell to minors. They should already be following the law, but sometimes, you know, it takes someone watching you to make sure that you do the right thing. And so I don't want to give you the impression that it's just the American Lung Association. We have a variety of both national and state-based partners working collectively on this. The American Heart Association, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Cancer Society, Texas Medical Association, Texas Pediatric Society, Texas PTA, Parent-Teacher Alliance, a host of individual groups, all with different members working toward a common goal, and that is reducing the #1 cause of preventable death and disease in Texas. So a couple of things I wanted to highlight for you as we're working on. One of our big priorities this session is increasing funds for tobacco control programs. As you can see here, Texas spends only $3.5 million on tobacco control programs. So these are programs that fund, say what? These are programs that fund awareness campaigns. These are programs that fund the Quit Line, all that kind of comprehensive resources that for a state the size of Texas really needs a lot of. Texas is only spending $3.6 million. And when you compare that to how much the tobacco industry is spending to get you all to buy their products, that's $618 million. So really, I think it's 190 to 1, the comparison of money spent to addict Texans and money spent to help them. And so it's not surprising that we continue to have problems, particularly with youth usage, when we're spending so little to just combat the industry. And when we talk about youth smoking and youth using tobacco products, you know, they are victims of a very successful marketing campaign. I would be very surprised how many people would ever start smoking if they never saw an advertisement for an e-cigarette product. But unfortunately, they see a lot of advertisements for them. And so one of our big goals is to get David versus Goliath, try to level the playing field and give Texas a resource it needs to combat the tobacco industry. Here's a map of those local smoke-free ordinances. As I mentioned, there's no statewide ordinance, unfortunately. That's something we're still working on. But every city on this map has passed a local ordinance that says you cannot smoke in indoor workplaces. The big ones are usually bars and restaurants. And so if you see your city on this map, congratulations, your community has taken action. But if you don't see the city on your map, it might be a good opportunity to talk with your community members about why don't we have a local smoke-free ordinance? Isn't it common sense to just ask people to step outside when they want to use a tobacco product? I know you all are a little younger than me, but even I barely remember when restaurants had smoking sections. Those don't exist anymore thanks to smoke-free indoor air laws. And the reason we like smoke-free indoor air laws is they denormalize tobacco use. So instead of seeing it at your workplace, at the restaurant, at the bar, wherever you're going, it's very limited to outdoor areas that you're not dealing with on a regular basis, combined with the fact that you're not inhaling that secondhand smoke, which you know is often more dangerous than the mainline smoke you breathe in through a filter. And then more recently, as I mentioned, we've been working to kind of whack-a-mole, close the loopholes that e-cigarettes are operating in. And so we've been able to close all the loopholes when it comes to retailer and distributor licenses. But one big outstanding item, particularly for e-cigarettes, is that they are still untaxed, unlike every other tobacco product. And so as you all know, e-cigarettes are just the modern version of tobacco product. They're just the 21st century version of a cigarette. And so it makes no sense why they shouldn't be taxed like every other tobacco product that does untold damage in our communities. And as part of that conversation around taxing them, you'll see there's a lot of different ways to tax them. And one measure that we've seen in a lot of states that we've actually been working to stop and combat is taxing them at a very low 5 cents per milliliter. And you can see here why that just doesn't make sense. I mean, for a pack of 4 Juul pods, you're telling me an extra 14 cents is going to dissuade anyone from purchasing them? I have a hard time believing that. But as you see, once we get into a percentage tax, we have much higher rates, not only on those Juul and puff bars, but it's an equal amount on all products, so that we're not unintentionally pushing folks toward one e-cigarette product and another. Rather, we're covering all products equally. And so what we'd really like to see is, a very high tax. 30% is about the equivalent of the cigarette tax, but what we'd really like to see at least is that 10% amount, because you can see here, $1.50, $1.60. That's got some real impact, particularly if you're a teenager and you've got a limited budget, right? 14 cents, everyone can find that 14 cents, but an extra $1.60, particularly over time, is really going to add up quite quickly. And then we're still working on trying to do something around flavored tobacco. There's no current statewide restriction on flavored tobacco products. There is some work being done at the federal level around menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. But we do have 2 bills this session that would restrict the sale of flavored tobacco products. One is just e-cigarettes, and one is all tobacco products. We'll wait to see if those move, but we at least like to see that lawmakers are thinking about it, because again, those flavors play such a large role in getting teenagers to start using e-cigarettes. I mean, do y'all know anyone who's going to happily start with a regular tobacco product, a regular cigarette that tastes like tobacco, versus some nice, kiwi, melon, fruit punch? Okay, so just thinking about that. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we want to hold retailers accountable. They're the adults in the situation. They're the ones selling these products. They got to get a license from the state. And we want to continue to put more pressure on them to do the right thing. And we want to move away from penalizing, particularly using the criminal justice system, penalizing minors, because again, they are victims of a very successful marketing campaign. And as we know, currently that $100 fine is going to affect families a lot differently. A wealthy family might be able to easily pay a $100 fine if their kid is caught with tobacco product. Another family, that might really cause some hard discussion and hard decisions. And again, a lot of these teenagers who are being caught with tobacco products, they're addicted. They need help. They need education. They don't need multiple fines and possible jail time. Okay. So what can you do? I've given you a lot of information about the policies and the things that need to be done, but how do we make it happen? And so that's where your voice is so crucial. Lawmakers need to know what's happening in their community. They're hearing from all sorts of folks. And so it's incredibly important that they hear from you, because if they don't hear from you, they're going to think everything's hunky-dory, everything's going fine. But if they're regularly hearing, hey, we need help dealing with e-cigarettes, we need help dealing with tobacco products, that is going to help move the needle. And so you all can do multiple things, either from the comfort of your own home, or if you're able to make it to Austin. So you can share stories of tobacco's impact with your community. You can engage with lawmakers year-round. You can come to Austin and provide comments for a hearing, or speak at a press conference like Kellen here did. You can help get media around the issue. All of your cities, I would assume, have some sort of local paper, local radio station. And so there's an opportunity to get them talking about youth vaping and tobacco use. And then lastly, what's really important is to identify and engage influencers in your community to create community champions. Your lawmakers probably don't know who you are. They'd love to hear from you, but they don't know who you are. But they do know who the head of the Chamber of Commerce is, or they do know who their biggest donor is. And so if you can figure out who are the other adults that these lawmakers regularly listen to, and who might be able to bend their ear a little more than I'm able to as a high school student. And so getting them on board and creating a kind of a coalition, if you will, or a work group of people across the community is how we start to move the needle. And so there's really several steps to this process. And I'm going to kind of take us each through each step. So the first step is obviously determining who your lawmakers are. And the easy way to do that is a website here, but you can really just Google who represents me, and you'll get this website. And so I typed in actually an address that I know is kind of split between districts. And so you might type in your address, and it gives you this, hey, we couldn't find your address. We think you're one of these 2 representatives. You're one of these 2 state senators. We're pretty sure your senator is Mays Middleton, but we don't know who your representatives are. If you run into that situation, and it's very, very common, to be honest, particularly as they redraw districts and split communities up, just go to your local county website, and there you can figure out who your lawmakers are and where your address fits into whose district. Because obviously going to the website and looking this up is not helpful. You need to know who your lawmaker is. And so, but again, just taking that quick step of looking up who represents me and confirming who your U.S. senators are. We all have the same U.S. senators, but who your state senator is. That's for those who live in this part of Brazoria County, that's Senator Mays Middleton. He's one of 31 senators here in Austin. Or who your state representative are. That's one of 150 state representatives here in Austin. Very different than your U.S. representatives, your congressmen who go up to Washington, D.C. So once you've determined who represents your community, that's who you want to engage with, because you're the one, they are supposed to represent you and your district, and you have the ability to vote for them, to donate to them, or to vote for their opponent. So they have more of an incentive to listen to you than someone like me who lives in Austin. And so the next thing we want to do is we want to go and look at their website and learn more about their district. So here I've got just a screenshot here, Representative Steve Allison. We can see, okay, he's got a district office down in San Antonio. He's on these committees. And then we've got all this great information about district profile reports, population analysis, school districts, what cities does it include, even what zip codes. Similar with Senator Angela Paxton, it lists what committee she's on. And you can actually go click on this map on the website, and it will show you what a picture of the district looks like. So you have kind of trouble figuring out, well, is my neighbor in the other county? Are they also in this district? Could they join me in a meeting? Oh, no, unfortunately, they're in a different district. But one thing I really like on this is you can go look and see what school districts that lawmaker represents. Lawmakers obviously are very in tune with the schools in their area. They're a huge provider of jobs to people in the district, and obviously they educate the future Texans, you all. And so knowing what are the school districts, maybe I can reach out to some of these school districts and start to get more students from those schools to come join me and add to my voice is a great way to think about how to engage with your lawmakers. Or maybe you can go and reach out to some of these schools and talk and collect stories. Maybe you not only talk to students, but talk to teachers, talk to the school nurse, and collect stories. What are you seeing in your schools around vaping? And then it's up to you to make sure the lawmaker learns that information so they can act on it. If lawmakers don't know a problem exists, if they're not hearing about it regularly, it's going to fall much lower on their priority list than if they're hearing about it regularly and being told, we need you to do something about this. So I'd really encourage you all to go and take a look at your state representative and your state senator and look at what schools are in their district and figure out, start mapping your connection and networks. What you can also do on the Senate websites is you can watch video. So fortunately, not every state does this, but in Texas, every committee hearing, every House vote, every Senate vote is recorded and played online. And so if a hearing's going on that day, you can go to News and Media Live video. But if you want to go back and maybe see how a previous bill, when it was up, how that bill hearing went, or what did the people say when they testified, this is where you can go back. So you can go by year and look, and we'll come back to this in a minute. The next step, so once you've identified your lawmaker, once you've done some research on their website, figured out what committees they're on, who do they represent, let's start following bills and figuring out, what's been filed. And so this is the capital.texas.gov. It's the Texas Legislature Online. And this, pause, it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but on the left here, we see their main homepage, and it's got a ton of information from committees, committee meetings, bill search, bill lookup. You can even look at the state constitution. From there, what I would encourage you to do is go to this bill search. We're going to go to bill search, and we're going to go in here and we're going to look up anything with the subject of tobacco. We want every bill that touches tobacco, and that's going to pull us a nice report here. So, for example, I pulled a report of last session back in 2021. What were all the tobacco bills filed? And so you may recall one of your colleagues, Micah Sanchez, came and testified back in 2021 about an e-cigarette tax bill. So let's see if we can find that. All right, so we found House Bill 211. All right, it's got all the history here. It's got the record House votes. It's got what committees it was heard in. We're going to go click on the actions. And here it has all these kind of stages of the bill as well as PDF. So you've got the actual bill language. You can look at the fiscal note. How much is this bill going to cost? You can look at the analysis, but really what I like to look at is the witness list. Who registered for this bill? And so again, we look at the witness list and there it is, Micah Sanchez against the bill. Perfect. So we found the right bill, House Bill 211. It looks like that was on April 12th, 2021. So let's go back to the House website and go look at the videos and see if we can find that video of Micah testifying. All right, so we're going to click on the 87th session. That was 2021. It was in the Ways and Means Committee. As you see, it says right there, Ways and Means Committee. And looks like if we scroll down, we'll find the meeting on April 12th. And sure enough, there is Micah testifying in front of the House Ways and Means Committee. And funny story, after Micah's testimony, the bill that she was testifying on literally changed because of her testimony. There was an amendment on the House floor named after Micah that would dedicate a portion of revenue to the Department of State Health Services tobacco prevention programs, because Micah did such a good job demonstrating the need for resources and the need for help for schools and teens, that the group of lawmakers said, all right, we're going to change our bill because you came and spoke to us and made such a passionate plea to do more. So a little bit more information about committee meetings. Committee meetings are usually posted only 1 week beforehand. So for example, today is Wednesday. They've just posted next Monday's hearings. They haven't posted next Tuesdays, they'll post those tomorrow. So usually less than a week, which makes it really difficult for folks like you who don't live near Austin to stay engaged as part of the process. But if you are planning to come in, you're like, I just got to come talk about this issue when it's heard, keep an eye on those and just be ready. Now, I will note committee meeting times are not always accurate. They'll often say 8 or 9 a.m. Sometimes they'll meet right on time. But what happens more often than not, particularly as the legislative session evolves, is they'll start their hearing, then they'll have to stop the hearing, go to the House floor or the Senate floor, vote on a bunch of bills, and then once that's done, then they go back to the committee hearing and continue going through the committee hearing. So sometimes you really need to, unfortunately, be prepared to stay all day if you're coming in Austin. We always hope to, get you in and out as quick as we can, but there's been several times where we're here till, we got there at 8 a.m. and we didn't leave until 4 or 5 p.m. because that's just how long it took for our bill to get heard. So again, if you're planning on coming to speak at a committee hearing, you want to block your entire day off. Once you get to the Capitol, there are kiosks, little kind of iPads mounted on the wall that you can use to register. And I've got some pictures of that in a minute of what that looks like. When you're registering on a bill, you have a couple options. You can testify in person, or you can sometimes just provide comments online. So you don't have to be there in person, but you can still put some notes in. You can be in support of a bill, you can be in opposition to a bill, or you can just be on a bill. So a good example might be a bill that taxes e-cigarettes at 5%. We don't think it's quite strong enough to have an impact, but we think it's a lot better than what the other bills we were looking at. So you might be on the bill and just say, hey, I don't think we can yet support this, but I wanted to appreciate the lawmaker filing this and wanted to just give this committee some more information as they continue to think about this bill. So again, you can just be on and provide information to the committee. And that's what they really need to hear. They need to hear information. It's good for them to hear which organizations support and oppose their bill, but hearing from folks just how they think the bill might impact their community or concerns the bill might accidentally create. Those are all good things to share with lawmakers. Now, I will note, unfortunately, when it comes to the Senate committees, you have to be in person to provide comments. But when it comes to a House hearing, you can do that online. And so that is a nice tool for you all who are not close to Austin. And the only other thing about committee hearings is that when you are called up to speak, you only have 2 or 3 minutes. It's a very short period of time. And while 3 minutes practicing may be perfect, when you get there and the adrenaline hits and all the lights, 2 minutes goes by like that. So you really want to have short, sweet comments to share with the committee. So what do these committee postings look like? So this is an example of a committee hearing that was last year. We have the committee name, the Ways and Means Committee, the time and date, where it's going to be. This is confusing for you all, but this is a specific building near the Capitol. And then as you see here, it says, all right, we're going to have this hearing. And we're going to hear about 2 bills, or 3 bills really: House Bill 2080, Senate Bill 903, and Senate Bill 248. That's the bill we want to pay attention to. And as you can see here, there's 4 different options for folks to be involved. If you want to testify in person, you click on that first link. If you just want to watch the video, you click on that second link. If you want to submit comments virtually, you use that last link. And that is a great opportunity for all of you who are not in Austin to add your voice from the comfort of your home or comfort of your cell phone, if you will. So what is it? This is what that form looks like. And again, unfortunately, this is limited to the House. You can only do this in House committee hearings, but it is a great way for you all to be engaged. So you click on the form, you got to check a box to confirm, hey, I'm a Texas resident. I'm going to tell the truth, whatever I'm saying. You've got to fill out your information, and then you pick which bill you want to comment on, and then it just has a little text box, and you can write whatever you want. It can be short and sweet. I really appreciate and support this bill. That's all. Or you can tell them a whole story about why you think this bill is important and give them information that might be useful. So, covered a lot. We've gone through who represents my community. We've covered state lawmaker websites and how to gather information from them and figure out who represents their district. We've looked at information on bills, laws, and how to sign up for alerts. We've gone through relevant committees. And again, I have listed here the usual committees that tobacco issues come before. And so now we're at the last most important bit, and that is communicating with lawmakers before, during, and after. And you'll see I underline those because there is no, silver bullet. There's no single meeting that's going to change lawmakers' mind. It really has to be an ongoing process to engage with them. And so first thing to think about as you're trying to influence a lawmaker is, who do they rely on for advice on legislation? We know that majority of lawmakers have relatively traditional jobs. They might be lawyers, they might be retail owners, they might be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher. So they don't know everything when it comes to policy. They rely on a group. Who do they rely on? Well, if you were a lawmaker, who would you rely on? You'd probably rely on your family. You'd rely on your close friends. Maybe ask your coworkers. Personal views often play a big role for lawmakers. Are they? What are their religious views? What is the community they represent? What is their education level? Someone with multiple bachelor's and master's degrees might have a very different opinion on an issue relating to schools than someone who only has a high school diploma and never went to college. Lawmakers listen to local leaders, local newspapers. Obviously, they listen to donors. Who gives them money? And last and most importantly, people who can vote for them. So me, I live in Austin. I can only vote for one representative and one senator, but I've got to go talk to all of them. And so they're not going to listen to me quite the same way. They're going to listen to someone who lives in their district and can vote for them. And so I want you, as you're thinking about planning to engage with a lawmaker, try to kind of map out who influences them, and do you know anyone in those spheres of influence? Or do you know someone who might know someone who's their best friend from high school? Here's some important dates. The current legislative session in Texas, we only meet once every 2 years for 140 days. So we are currently smack in the middle of that legislative session. That's going to run until the end of May. Then what's going to happen is there will be interim studies issued. And essentially what that means is, after lawmakers pass bills, they get the committees back together to see if the bills are working. And so they request feedback. They invite people in to say, hey, that bill we passed last year, how's it working? And so that is an opportunity to engage. Then there's going to be the November 2024 elections, where almost all of them will be up for re-election. And then the next legislative session will start again next January. And so the reason I point all this out is that it's a continuous cycle, and you cannot just wait until the legislative session starts every 2 years, or else you're missing an entire gap there of 1.5 years where you could be engaging with lawmakers, whether it's around the interim study, whether it's around their election, or just anywhere in between. And so again, as bills are moving through the stages, and I'm sure you've all seen, how a bill becomes a law, but it's got to be filed first, and then it's got to be voted on by a House committee, then it's got to be approved by the whole House, then it's got to be voted on by a Senate committee, then it's got to be voted on by the entire Senate, and then lastly, the governor has to either sign it or veto it, and then the bill can become law. And so at every step of this process are opportunities to engage with lawmakers. So before bills are even filed, great time to engage with lawmakers, because they're probably thinking, what bills am I going to file? I've already had, the bankers have asked me to file one bill. The property tax folks have asked me to file another bill, but I've got some other space to file bills. What should I file? And they're going to rely on what they're hearing from their community. So you can talk before a bill is filed. Once a bill is filed, follow up and say, hey, I noticed you filed a bill around this issue. I'd love to talk to you about it. And maybe I noticed you filed a bill around prohibiting the sale of flavored tobacco products. Let me tell you what a great impact that would be in my community, because I know that those flavors play such a big role in getting my fellow teens started using the products. The green arrows here are when you can go and testify, and that's when they're in the Senate hearings. But obviously, before the committee hearing, after the committee hearing, before it's voted on the House, after it's voted on the House, those are all times to engage with lawmakers, and they should be hearing from you during every step of the process, because I can guarantee you, if it's a good bill, there's folks telling them regularly that, hey, you shouldn't do this. And so they often, particularly when it comes to tobacco, they need your backup. They need your support. They need to know their community has their back, because they're going to be hearing from the big tobacco and their multitude of lobbyists that this is a bad bill, you shouldn't do that. And so hearing from constituents, hearing from their community helps store up their backbone and make sure they do the right thing. And even you'll see an arrow all the way at the end after a bill becomes law. Yes, you can keep talking with lawmakers after a bill becomes law. That is a great time to say, hey, I noticed you passed this bill around tobacco. I'd love to talk to you about improving that bill. I'd love to talk to you about what else we can do to deal with tobacco, because we know no single piece of legislation, no one bill, unless it pulls tobacco products off the market, is going to solve this problem for us, right? It's going to be multiple bills over multiple years having a compounding impact. And so talking with lawmakers, looking who has historically filed tobacco bills, let's go talk with them and see if we can get them to do more. Or who maybe is regularly filing bills that relate to public health issues, but not tobacco. Let's go talk to them about the #1 public health concern in Texas, tobacco use. I also want to emphasize that you will not always be able to meet with a lawmaker. In fact, it's very rare that you can meet with a lawmaker, but that is okay. It is great to meet with their staff, particularly their staff in their district, because lawmakers rely on their staff to know what constituents think and they rely on staff on what to do for policy issues. So to give you a good example, most offices here at the Capitol have a handful of staffers on their team, and each staff usually has a set group of items that they're in charge of. And so one staffer might have all the bills around transportation. Another staffer might handle all the bills around the budget. And then another staffer might handle all the public health bills. Lawmakers rely on that staffer to be more of an expert than they are in the field, because they don't have time to read all the bills as they come up. They rely on staff to do a lot of that legwork for them. So if you can build a relationship with those staffers, you can make sure they're saying the right things to lawmakers when they do meet with them on bills. So I've got here 2 different stories, one on the left, one on the right. I'm going to give you a minute to read them, and then I want you to use the chat box to let me know if you think the left story is more effective or if you think the right story is more effective. Which of these 2 stories do you think is more likely to make a lawmaker vote yes on increasing tobacco funds, the left story or the right story? And let's chime in. Let's see the chats. Come on, someone give me a guess. What do we think here? Which story might move the needle? The right story? Okay, I got 1 vote for the right story, the right story. You guys are right. That is the right story. Now, why? What's the difference? This left story, I've got all this great data, 19% of high school students, $3.5 million, last in the nation. Are you telling me lawmakers don't listen to data? No, they unfortunately don't listen to data nearly as much as they listen to stories. And what's one thing you'll notice about this story is it paints a picture. You can almost imagine, you can see what the student is describing by the way they use it. You know, they describe what the smell looked like. They talk about the teacher and students running out. They have a great personal example. One of my best friends has to have their vape with them at all times. That puts a personal face on these statistics. So I go in with the statistics, but you all go in with the stories that put a face to statistics and say, holy moly, 19% of high school students in the abstract doesn't sound like a lot, but I just heard from 4 teenagers who all told me it's almost every kid in their school. I need to deal with this seriously, right? So these personal stories help move the needle. They really can play a crucial factor. There was a few years ago, we were working on a bill that would have spent a lot of money on cancer research, and there was understandably a lot of hesitation. It was $3 billion. But we brought in someone whose son had unfortunately passed away from cancer. And one of the lawmakers on the committee remembered meeting the son when they came to the Capitol a few years earlier. And because he remembered that connection, he now had a personal face to put on this giant, big cancer research thing. It was going to help kids like that kid I met who unfortunately passed away. And he instantly said, I'm for this. I'm going to support this bill. We've been trying to meet with him and give all the data for weeks, but it was that story that changed him from a maybe no to a definite yes. So when you're building your story, you want to think about what's your story, who do you represent, and what information can you share that others cannot? anyone can share the data. It's easy to look up. You can share it with lawmakers, but I don't have the stories that you all have. And so when you're building, and this can be both for a committee hearing or we're just planning to meet with a lawmaker's office. You want to start, you introduce yourself, say where you live and what your position is on an issue or bill. And so one way to do that is, hi, my name is Charlie Gagan. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm here to support House Bill 123. But a better way to do that is to, again, paint the picture, be more specific. My name is Charlie Gagan. I'm a senior here at Westlake High School in Austin, Texas. My representative is Donna Howard. I live in her district, and I'm here to support House Bill 123. Now, that second one set off a lot more flags for lawmakers. One, okay, this is a high school student. Oh, I know where that high school is. I've been there. I've driven by it. And maybe Representative Howard's on that committee, or maybe she's not. But it helps personalize and bring in the fact that I'm a real person who lives and can vote for these lawmakers, and I'd like to share my story with them. Again, you want to try to focus on one or two stories. As much as you want to write an entire essay with all the great examples and reasons, you really have got to narrow it down to one, maybe two stories. You want to be specific. You want to paint the picture, use descriptive words. And really what you really want to do is create an emotional response. Lawmakers, as we've talked about, don't base their decisions on facts and figures most of the time. They base it on an emotional response. And so your goal in these meetings is to trigger an emotional response from the lawmakers. Maybe it's getting them to think about their own kids who are in school and might be exposed to vaping products. Maybe it's to get them to think about some of their relatives or family members who dealt with tobacco or dealt with lung cancer, lung disease. Trying to get them to really think about this on a personal level, not a policy level, is how you move the needle. And so again, you want to be short and concise, usually only about 2 minutes, particularly when you're meeting with, either when you're meeting with an office, because you usually only have 5-10 minutes max, but particularly when you're coming to testify, you want to keep it to a nice, crisp 2 minutes. And so the last thing I want to note is at the end of whatever you say, you want to reiterate your position and thank the lawmakers for your time. So I urge this committee to support House Bill 123, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Now, sometimes you may get questions, which is great. Sometimes you may not, and that's fine. Don't take it personally. Whether you get questions has a lot to do with what else is on the schedule that day, how long they've been going. It has nothing to do with what you said or the value of it, okay? So I rarely get follow-up questions. I do see teenagers more often get follow-up questions, even if it's just, I really want to thank you for coming out. It's so important to have, you know, our future leaders of Texas taking part in this process. Great, I appreciate it, thank you. And lastly, be sure to follow up. As I mentioned, no single meeting, no single testimony is going to move the needle completely. It has to be part of a process. And so that might be after you testify in committee hearing, following up a week later with the committee, you know, chair and lawmakers, say, hey, I spoke to you all last week at the committee hearing. I wanted to see if y'all had any more questions or if you were still going to plan to vote for that bill. Or if you met with a lawmaker's office for the first time, you can say, great, I really enjoyed this meeting. Can I follow up again in a month or 2 months? Start to build that relationship and build those expectations that you are going to be following up with them. They may try to say, yeah, well, yeah, sure, we'll listen to you. This was nice. And then they may try to, you know, put you in a folder and put it away in a drawer. But if they know you're watching them, if they know you're going to follow up, then they've got to stay on top of the issue and be ready to respond to you, right? That's how you hold them accountable. And oftentimes lawmakers need a little help to be held accountable. So now I'm gonna pause, and I want to hear from, I think we have at least one person who can talk about their own experience doing this.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so actually just a few weeks ago, I was able to testify in front of the Senate Finance Committee in support of a budget increase for tobacco prevention. And it was a really awesome experience. It was definitely something unlike I had ever done before. And with the help of Charlie, I think we had a lot of success that day. So I wrote out my story just like Charlie said, and I made sure with the help of him that I was able to paint the picture of what is happening in my schools or in my school. And together we can help paint the picture of what's happening in all of our schools. And personally, that was the easiest part for me because I mean, as we all know, tobacco is an issue in our schools, and specifically vaping. So really the hardest part was picking out what examples to use. But yeah, then we went up to the Capitol, and it was a nice early morning. We actually registered on paper that morning. And like Charlie mentioned, we did end up sitting around quite a bit. We kept waiting for our names to get called, waiting for our names to get called. And then I think Charlie, I don't know if you remember what time we were called. It was pretty late before we were called. It was definitely later in the afternoon. And that 2 minutes did go by very quickly, but I could definitely tell that the lawmakers were very interested in what I was saying. Specifically, I think because I am a teenager and because I was painting a picture of something that's happening in schools. And I would definitely encourage anybody updated on the issues, and definitely go for it. It was a lot less scary than I thought. Definitely felt the adrenaline beforehand, but afterwards I was definitely really grateful that I had done it.
Thank you, Ella. And we really appreciate you coming up. And I can share some good news. The extra money you asked for and we asked for tobacco programs looks like it is going to be included in the budget. So again, job well done. And so thank you, Ella. And again, even I still get the anxiety and the adrenaline rush, right? When you get up there, right? It's always daunting talking in front of people, right? But practice makes perfect, and you just got to go and do the best you can. And so I think Ella talked about some important points. She had to get there early. She spent a lot of time on her story. She had to really think about how do I compact this? I can share so much information with them, right? But how do I get this down to a single story in 2 minutes that is going to demonstrate what the need is, okay? And so again, we were able to have an older woman from the Valley come and talk about the value of tobacco programs. We had Ella talk about the value of youth programs. And so we were really able to paint kind of a comprehensive picture of the need to do more when it came to fighting tobacco. So thank you, Ella, again, for coming down and being a part of this. And we would love to have all of you come down as well at some point in the future. So I want to wrap up here, and then we can open up for questions. But what are we working on right now in the Texas Capitol? And so we've already talked about that increase of $3 million for the Department of State Health Services tobacco prevention budget. It's a small increase, but it is the first increase in a long time and helps getting us back towards where we need to be. We're monitoring a couple bills that will tax e-cigarettes, and they're listed there. We're monitoring a couple bills that will prohibit the sale of tobacco products. The first one there actually prohibits any single-use e-cigarette. That would be almost every Juul, Vuse, Puff Bar, Elf Bar, you name it, that are disposable and single use. The other two bills relate to flavored tobacco products. There's some bills on advertising restrictions. One of them is kind of a whack-a-mole. It's a place where tobacco is already prohibited to be advertised, and we're just adding and e-cigarettes. Another one would prohibit any advertising that includes images aimed at minors, so celebrities, cartoons, things like that. There's some bills relating to youth penalties that we're a little concerned about. Two of them would actually increase the penalty for a teenager caught with multiple vaping products on school. Again, we don't want to punish kids for being targets of a marketing industry. We want to punish the retailers who are selling these products. So we're keeping an eye on those. And then lastly, there's a couple bills to prohibit tobacco use on state property. And so that would be on institutes of higher education, college campuses, as well as, state grounds like the Capitol or different agency departments. So I would encourage you all to write these down, take a screenshot, and go into that website we talked about earlier and follow them. Take a look. Have these been heard? Who registered how on them? Is there a way for you, particularly the ones on the House side, to add your voice when they are up in committee? And so you can go to the website and say, hey, I want to be notified when these bills, send me an email when these bills, are referred to a committee hearing, and you'll get that email notification so you can take action. But that is my presentation, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and just open it up to see. I would love to hear any questions you all have, either about the policies, about advocacy, about, what do y'all got for me?
While we give anybody time to put questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, we have both open and we can see and we can direct them to Charlie if he misses one. I do have a question for you. Some of our participants are going to be younger than 18, and 18 is the voting age. And you talked about how they want to listen to their constituents, those that will vote for them. But what if there's a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old who's listening and they want to share their voice? Will elected officials still listen to them?
Absolutely. And I'll give you two reasons. One, you will eventually be 18 and you'll be able to vote then. And obviously the memories and experiences you have as a 15-year-old are going to dictate who and how you vote, right? So if you go meet with a lawmaker and they're like, I don't meet with, people who are underage, you can remember that when you're 18 and they're up for re-election. Secondly, 15-year-olds have parents, and parents do vote. And obviously, the lawmaker is going to assume that after you meet with their office, you're going to go tell your parents how the meeting went. And so they want that meeting to go well, because that's two more voters they might, potentially gain or lose depending on how they treated you. So obviously, we don't want anyone voting early. Wait till you're 18 to vote, but don't let that be an obstacle for coming and sharing your voice. Particularly, we talk about vaping in middle school. Hard to get middle school voices up here, but man, that would have an impact if a middle schooler came in and said, I need you to do more. My friends need help. So don't let your age, dissuade you. You all are the future leaders. At least one of y'all will probably be a lawmaker one day. And so it's never too early to get started.
And I love how you brought up Micah, and she had the opportunity to testify. Micah was a teen ambassador, and Ella is a teen ambassador. She is from the Corpus Christi area. So, but I love how we're able to see actual examples of the power of the youth voice, because I think a lot of times young people think, even adults too, we think, can my voice really create significant change? But it clearly does. I mean, you said that Micah, with her testimony, they actually completely redirected with what they were doing. In fact, they honored her on the floor, as what you said. I think that's a huge achievement for a young person. But then also you mentioned for Ella, because of Ella's testimony, it seems like they are going to dedicate more funds to tobacco prevention. So I think it just goes to show for everybody who is joining today, whether you're a youth, even an adult, the power of your voice is significant, and you really can create everlasting change.
Yep. And just to be clear, I've never had any amendments on the floor named after the work that I've done, but Micah has. So you all can be more effective than I am just by coming and adding your voice. And I went to look, but they did. I thought they might have named the amendment after Micah. They didn't do that. But if you go listen to the debate on the House floor on that bill, they will specifically mention, we had a young woman from my district, name was Micah. She spoke so eloquently, and we're changing this bill because of what she said and what she told us.
Yeah. And I think Micah at the time was 16, maybe. I think so. Yeah. So if you're 14, 15, 16, whatever, I think you can relate to that, being the same age, and just to know that somebody the same age as you, or maybe a year younger or older than you, is able to create significant change. You can create that change too. You can use your story to drive change forward.
Absolutely. In fact, the tobacco industry is relying on you all being quiet so that they can fill that vacuum and tell lawmakers, hey, these products aren't that bad. We're helping adults. So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that they do hear your voice, and that they don't just assume if you're not saying anything, everything must be going fine, right?
Yeah, a very good point. Well, I haven't seen any questions come in, but if anybody listening does want to maybe go to the Capitol and testify, if they'd like to do that, is it okay if they get into contact with you to work with you and the American Lung Association?
Absolutely.
Whether it's crafting the story to send online or showing up in person?
I would be more than happy to work with any of you all to help amplify your voice, because like I said, I can only do so much. And so having stories like you all, either if you're sharing them or if I can share them, helps move the needle, and again, paints that picture for lawmakers that is so crucial, so they act. It, makes it a high priority. If there was a plume of mystery smoke hanging around the city, people would not wait to act on it. And so we want to make vaping and tobacco front and center in their minds as something that needs to be dealt with now.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie, and thank you, Ella, for providing your experience at the Capitol. As I mentioned earlier, when we got started, there'd be an opportunity for you to share your story. So what will happen is we'll send you an evaluation Once you complete that evaluation, you'll be directed to the opportunity to type up a story and submit it. And then we will share that with Charlie and the American Lung Association. So you have that opportunity. So if you really already have a story in mind, you could have experienced it today at school, and you want to write about it, now is your opportunity. But of course, your opportunity exists no matter what, but you'll have the opportunity after this training ends to type that up and include that.
And then, Kathleen, if I could just reiterate, even I know a lot of y'all are busy with school for the next 2 months and are going to be focused on exams and applying to college, things like that. And it's okay if you miss your opportunity this session, but don't wait until the next one. In the summer, reach out to your lawmaker offices. In the fall, reach out to your lawmaker offices. Next spring, reach out to them. Don't wait until legislative session starts, because it's often very busy and very hectic. Really use that time in between to take, when things are slowed down, to meet with lawmakers and build that relationship. And it may take you, 5 phone calls and 2 meetings with the staff before you finally get to meet with the lawmaker, but persistence does pay off. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, we have seen that pay off ourselves with some of our teen ambassadors over the years. And so if you do want to type up your testimony and send it in, but you want to have somebody take a look at it to make sure it makes sense and it sounds good, you ask your friends, ask your family, or you could send it to Say What, and we would be happy to read it and provide feedback and whatnot. But also Charlie is a great resource as well. So definitely take advantage of all the wonderful resources. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the wealth of information that Charlie has provided. And I hope that you feel empowered and you feel spirited to, craft your story on paper and share, because it definitely needs to be heard. All right. Well, thanks everybody again. And this has been recorded, and we'll provide a link in a few days to the recording. So if you want to watch it again or share it with a friend, you'll be able to. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your night, and thanks so much.